we're going to get to darkness and making sure we have that covered as well.
Yes.
But at night, we want to make sure we're in pitch dark to help with the melatonin on the other end of what you just talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you'll notice that the keys to good health is doing the right thing at the right time. We have very good evidence that exercise is good for you, but we also have very good evidence that rest is good for you, right? So how could that be that these two opposites are both good for us? How is it possible that eating food is good for us, but at the same time fasting is also good for us, right? Again, these two things that are completely the opposite of each other, yet they're both good for us. And I think the key here is understanding that there is a time for things and there's a time not to do things. And what we're trying to say here with light is there's a time to go out and get as much light as possible into your eyes, and that's in the morning time before 9 o'clock. And then there's a time that you want to make sure that you're not exposed to bright light at all. And that is at night, as you've just mentioned. So there's a time for light, there's a time for darkness, there's a time for eating, there's a time for fasting, etc.
So far, when we talked about UV, we were focused on light on the skin. Now with visible, we're focused on light in the eyes.
Yes.
Let's expand out and talk about visible light on the skin. And I want to take our time here and get into the benefits of light on the skin, if there are any. And then if there's any detriment at night, if we're, say, wearing those blue light blocking glasses, protecting the eyes, but still getting dirty light, we'll call it, on the skin.
Yeah, so this is not a black and white issue. There's not a heavy demarcation here. And I'll say that when we look at visible light on the skin, which is what you brought up, this benefit of infrared light, which we haven't gotten to yet, does bleed a little bit into the visible spectrum because there's a number of studies that show that red light itself, which is of course visible, can actually have a benefit. But the benefits are probably tied in with a lot of what we're about to say. And when we get to infrared light, which is a topic that I just love to talk about. So in terms of visible light on the skin, there are some studies, most of them are in the red light. When we talk about blue blocking glasses, again, the reason why we even talk about blue blocking glasses is because the blue blockers are obviously blocking blue light, and it's those intrinsically sensitive, photosensitive retinal ganglion cells that are exquisitely sensitive to that blue light. But let's face it, Jesse, they're sensitive to just about any type of light. And so really the best thing at night is to have no light. The second best thing is to have no blue light. And the worst thing is to have all types of light. So blue blockers have their role. I would say, just go for the gusto and eliminate all the light altogether.
Okay. Do we know a lot about the sensors, if there are even sensors in the skin, when it comes to activating in a good way and then protecting those at night so we don't get light on the skin, if that's going to affect melatonin?
Here's the problem that it would have to be very close to the surface. And that's because of this thing that we talk about, which is the depth of penetration. So if you look at the simple physics of light, shorter wavelengths like ultraviolet light cannot penetrate very easily at all. This is the reason why it has a hard time getting through clothes. This is the reason why when it hits your skin, it can get down maybe into the dermis at most. And that's really where these cholesterol derivatives are turned into vitamin D. But beyond that, as we start to get into the visible spectrum, yes, it can penetrate a little bit deeper, but not much deeper. Once you start getting down into muscle and into bone and the internal organs, the only type of light that's going to get down that far in the body is well into the infrared spectrum.
Okay. The reason I bring this up, I believe there's one study, it may be really old, where they shone light on the back of the knee, I believe, and how that affected either melatonin or sleep. I'm getting out of my wheelhouse here, but basically I've also heard people talk about blue blockers not being enough at night, and we need to be covering up our skin as well to block the bad light.
That's very possible. That's an area that I think may need more research. I certainly need to look into that more. I do believe that we really need to be in a very dark environment when we're sleeping. And this can be a problem for people who are sleep shift workers, or night shift workers, I should say, because the rooms really need to be blacked out. And it may not be enough just to have eye patches that you wear at night.
Let's stick with the night shift workers. Talk about what happens to their physiology. Even if they are doing what you just said, making sure they're conscious of blocking the bad light when they're sleeping,
Yeah.
is there any hope for them?
If someone is dedicated to that night shift, the best thing that they can do is to really just make the flip and be a nocturnal creature every day of the week. Most people who are night shift workers who do 12 on 12 off are only really required to work about 3 days a week. 3 to 4 days a week tops. And the question really becomes, what do they do on the other days of the week that they're not working? Are they diurnal creatures that get up and are awake during the day? If that's the case, then they're working at night when their circadian rhythm believes that they should be asleep. Okay, and that's really where the harms come in with night shift workers. Most people, in my experience, are those type of people. They are day people, but 3 days a week they work at night. Okay, now that's as opposed to people who are true night shift people. When I say that means that even on the days that they are not working, they still get up at night and they still sleep during the day. If those people probably, if they do that correctly, and when I say correctly, I mean they're eating during the nighttime. They're treating their night as day and their day as night every single day of the week. They probably don't experience the same metabolic issues that we know occur in most night shift workers, which is increased diabetes, increased cancer risk, all of these things, obesity, etc. The reason why I believe that happens is because their circadian rhythm is still firmly anchored as a day shift worker, and they're just working these late nights. So there's a recent study, I will add though, there was a recent study that was done where they took people who were working day shift, they converted them into night shift workers, and then they did a randomized controlled trial, which was very interesting. What they found was, in this very short-term trial, they were able to find markers metabolically that were surrogates for end-stage diseases like diabetes, hypertension, obesity, etc. And I don't recall what the names of those biomarkers are, but you could look it up if you get the study. What they did in the study was something very interesting. They simply randomized these groups of people to either eating at night or whenever they wanted to, and those people that were only allowed to eat during the day when they were sleeping. So how did they eat? They would eat and then sleep for about 3 or 4 hours, and then eat and then sleep for about 3 or 4 hours, and then eat, etc. In other words, the key is that when they went into work at night, they did not consume any calories. Okay? What they found in that study, very interestingly, is that intervention group that did not eat any food while they were working at night, they were able to reduce these surrogate markers of these bad diseases by about 80 to 90%. Fascinating. I'm a night shift worker. I occasionally have to do night shifts in the intensive care unit. I am certainly not a creature whose circadian rhythm is at night. I am firmly in the day. So when I do these things, I have to be, so as a result of that, I have adopted this practice, even though we need to do more studies on this, of not eating anything while I do that night shift work and only eating during the day, to try to mitigate some of these factors that are involved with night shift work.
Okay, we're going to move to infrared light soon, but I want to make sure we cover one area in this realm first, being end of the day and when it gets dark. We did talk about the blue light blocking glasses and how they're an in-between. Best is not to have any of the bad light at all. But let's take me through an evening at your house. You just finished dinner. Given what you know about light, what are you doing throughout the house leading up to bedtime to protect against blue light and other harmful light?
Turning off lights Uh, so really, the distinction between blue light and red light is really um, not that big. Really, if you want to do anything that's effective, you just got to turn off the light. So as I said, because these intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells are in the inferior portion of your eyelid, you really want to turn off primarily overhead lights. Those are the biggest offenders. And if you have to have lights on, if you have to, better to have lights on that are low. Okay. And generally, if you want to have them a little bit more red, that's great. Made me think about, how we grew up as a human race 200 years ago. What was the type of light that we were exposed to in the evening time? Imagine we're outside, we've just done our hunting gathering, if you like, and we're sitting around what at night?
Campfire.
Exactly. And where is that light? It's low down. It's radiant. It's pretty dim, generally speaking, and it's red shifted. It's not blue shifted. So it's just interesting to me how everything that we used to do is so conducive to just a better experience in terms of our health. So we came out of that environment. We're now inside. We have lights that are overhead to illuminate what we're doing. It's like we're turning night into day, essentially, and putting our faces in front of screens. Look, I do it as well. As a physician, I have duties that I have to do. So, maybe my house is not the best example of what you need to do, but I'm working on it, just like everybody else is. We live in a system that requires a lot of inertia to change and to really get out of that system. There has to be a lot of change in our own lives to really get out of the system that we're in.
As you talk about our ancestors being outside around a campfire, it gets me thinking about light being reflected off the moon and light coming from stars.
Yeah.
Just interesting. I don't know if you've heard about any benefits to getting light in that realm.
Yeah, and the light from the moon, of course, is much dimmer, but there is infrared light there too. We'll talk about infrared light as well. If you, yeah, we'll talk about it when we get into infrared light, but there are some definite benefits. And it's interesting that the moon cycles, right? So there's a full moon at certain times of the month, and then there's a dark moon. Who knows whether or not that cycling actually has some beneficial effects on the human body as well. I don't think it's been studied, or at least I haven't seen any data yet.
Since you made it to the end of this clip, I know you're going to love the full episode. Click here to watch. I'll see you over there.
We're spending so much time inside. We have windows that block infrared light because we don't want to increase our cooling costs. We have replaced all of the lights in our homes with LED bulbs. What Bob Fosbury calls this is the scurvy of the 21st century.